You are standing in a room filled with light and sound. Perhaps it's the warm amber glow of a dinner party, the electric pulse of a city bar, or the familiar, comforting chaos of a family gathering. The air is thick with conversations that rise and fall like a tide, punctuated by the clinking of glasses and bursts of easy laughter. You are a part of it. Your lips move, forming words that are appropriate, that fit the moment. You nod, you smile, you might even tell a story, a well-rehearsed anecdote that always lands. From the outside, you are a perfect portrait of connection, a seamless part of the social fabric. But inside there is a profound silence, a vast echoing chamber where the noise of the room cannot reach. It feels as if you are watching the scene from behind a thick pane of glass. You can see the mouths moving, you can register the emotions, but you are fundamentally separate, an observer of your own life. The smile on your face feels like a mask you are holding up with tiring arms, and you are terrified that if you let it slip for even a second, everyone will see the abyss behind it. This feeling, this chilling internal isolation in the midst of company, is one of the most unsettling paradoxes of human existence. Why is it that the very moments designed to make us feel connected so often serve as the most potent reminders of our own solitude? We are raised on a mythology of completion. We are taught that wholeness is something to be found out there, in the arms of a soulmate, in the acceptance of a group, in the validation of a society that rewards conformity. We are told that this inner emptiness is a problem to be solved, a void to be filled with relationships, with achievements, with noise, with more. And so we run. We run from the quiet of our own homes, filling the silence with screens and sounds. We run from the stillness of our own minds, chasing the next distraction, the next goal, the next person who promises to make us feel entire. We treat our loneliness not as a state of being, but as a personal failure, a shameful secret to be medicated with constant frantic activity. But what if this is a profound misdiagnosis? What if the cure we have been sold is actually the disease? What if that aching void you feel is not a void at all, but rather a sacred space? A space that has been hollowed out within you, waiting not to be filled by others, but to be inhabited by you. Could it be that in our desperate search for a hand to hold, we have forgotten how to stand on our own? In our quest to be understood, how we neglected the far more critical work of understanding ourselves. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once spoke of a love that consists of two solitudes, protecting, bordering, and greeting each other. Think on that for a moment. Not two halves making a whole, but two sovereign worlds, standing in respectful, loving adjacency. This idea is so alien to our modern sensibilities. It suggests that the prerequisite for true, deep connection is not a merging, but a mastery of one's own inner world. It suggests that the path to communion with another begins with a long, arduous, and often terrifying journey into the self, alone. This brings us to the great unnerving question that beats at the heart of our modern lives. What if the profound loneliness you feel is not a sign that you are broken, but a sign that you are beginning to awaken? What if this ache is not an affliction, but an invitation, a summons from the deepest part of your being calling you to undertake the most important work of your life? A call to turn away from the distracting noise of the crowd and face the magnificent, intimidating silence within. It is a call to finally become whole, not by finding another, but by finding yourself. But before you can answer this call, you must first understand the invisible forces and the ancient fears that have been keeping you a prisoner of the crowd, terrified of the very solitude that promises your liberation. This terror you feel of true solitude, it is not a simple preference for company. It is not a quirk of your personality. It is a ghost. It is an ancient, inherited fear, woven into the very fabric of your consciousness from the moment you drew your first breath. To understand this prison, you must first understand its architecture, which was designed long before you were even aware of yourself as a separate being.
The blueprint lies in our earliest, most foundational experience of life, the undifferentiated bliss of infancy, where the boundary between self and other, between you and the nurturing world, did not exist. In the psychoanalytic sense, this was our first universe, a perfect, seamless union. And our expulsion from this paradise, the slow, dawning realization that we are separate, finite, and alone in our own skin, is the original wound. Separation is the first trauma. And so, a part of the human psyche is forever engaged in a desperate, unconscious project, the project of return. We chase mergers. We seek to dissolve our terrifying separateness in the warmth of another, a lover, a group, a movement, an ideology. We yearn to recreate that feeling of being perfectly held, perfectly understood, without the burden of a distinct self. This deep, primal ache is the engine of our flight from solitude. Solitude is the starkest reminder of that original separation, the cold, hard fact of our own sovereignty, and we flee from it like a fugitive from the scene of a crime, the crime of our own existence. To survive this separation, to navigate the world of others whose approval we needed for our very survival, we became masterful actors. The psychologist D.W. Winnicott identified this master creation as the false self. As a child, you learned with exquisite sensitivity which parts of your authentic being were met with warmth and which were met with disapproval or indifference. You learned to amplify the acceptable parts and to hide, repress, or amputate the inconvenient ones. You constructed a persona, a mask of compliance and agreeableness, designed to secure love and avoid abandonment. This false self was a brilliant survival strategy, but this strategy has become the cage. You have worn the mask for so long you have forgotten the shape of your own face. The terror of being alone, then, is the terror that with no audience to perform for, the mask will drop and you will be confronted with either the stranger you have hidden for decades, or worse, a terrifying emptiness where your true self was meant to be.
The philosophers have given this dread a name and a shape for centuries. Jean-Paul Sartre described how the gaze of another person turns us from a free subject into a fixed object. Under the weight of their perception, you become a thing to be defined, judged, and categorized. You perform your identity for them. And in doing so, you flee from what Sartre called the dizzying burden of absolute freedom. Solitude is the only escape from the petrifying gaze of the world, but it forces you to confront this freedom head-on. The terrifying responsibility of creating your own meaning out of nothing. It is so much easier to let the crowd define you. The 19th century thinker Søren Kierkegaard saw this crowd as the ultimate enemy of the individual. The crowd, he argued, is a phantom, an abstraction that allows us to abdicate personal responsibility, to lose ourselves in the anonymous comfort of groupthink. It offers a pre-packaged identity, a set of beliefs, and a chorus of voices to drown out the quiet, uncertain whisper of your own soul. To step out of the crowd is to become spiritually visible, vulnerable, and accountable. A terrifying prospect. This ancient fear is now amplified and weaponized by the very structure of our modern world. Our culture relentlessly celebrates the external, the extrovert, the team player, the influencer broadcasting their curated life. We are conditioned by a digital panopticon, a social media architecture that transforms the Sartrean gaze into a million potential eyes watching and rating our every move. We perform our happiness, our success, our relationships, creating a shimmering digital avatar that has less and less to do with the complex, messy, and often contradictory reality of our inner lives. This constant performance is exhausting, but the alternative, the silence of being unseen, unliked, unvalidated, feels like a form of death. The hidden problem then is this. You have been conditioned by biology, psychology, and society to believe that yourself is a project to be built and validated from the outside in. And because of this, you have abandoned the vast, fertile, and sacred territory within you. You have been made a stranger in your own home, and the unseen consequences of this internal exile are quietly shaping every moment of your reality.
This internal exile, the state of being a stranger in your own soul, is not a passive condition. It is an active, corrosive force. It is a slow, methodical hollowing out of your life from the inside.
leaving a beautiful, functional facade with nothing of substance behind it. The consequences are not loud or dramatic. They're silent, insidious, and they manifest in the quiet desperation that hums beneath the surface of your everyday existence. You likely know them by other names. You know it as the impostor syndrome, that persistent, gnawing fear that you are a fraud, and any day now you will be discovered. You dismiss your accomplishments as luck or deception because on a deep unconscious level, you know they belong to the mask, not to you. The praise you receive feels like a currency you cannot spend because it was earned by a character you are playing. This is not a cognitive error. It is an accurate spiritual assessment. You feel like an imposter because your life has become a masterpiece of impersonation. You know it as that chronic low-grade anxiety that follows you like a shadow. It's the tension in your shoulders, the shallow breath you take, the incessant hum of unease that no amount of success or comfort can seem to silence. This is the neurological cost of the performance. Your nervous system is in a perpetual state of high alert, constantly scanning the audience for approval, constantly managing the exhausting gap between your inner truth and your outer presentation. You're not anxious because there is something wrong with you. You are anxious because you are living a life that is fundamentally misaligned with your own being, and your body is keeping the score. This exile dictates your choices, leading you down paths you never consciously chose. When you do not have a firm connection to your own core, your decisions are not guided by an internal compass of desire and value, but by an external map of expectation. You choose the career that sounds prestigious, the partner who checks the right boxes, the life that looks good on paper. And you wake up one day in a house you paid for and a life you built, with a profound and terrifying sense of dislocation, as if you are a guest in someone else's story. This lack of an internal anchor is why you are so vulnerable to the currents of cultural opinion, so easily swayed by trends, so terrified of missing out. You look outward for direction because you've been taught to believe there is nothing or no one inside to consult. And this emptiness tragically poisons the well of your relationships. You come to others not as a whole person, but as a walking void, unconsciously hoping they will provide the substance and validation you cannot provide for yourself. Love ceases to be about the Rilkean ideal of two solitudes meeting, and instead becomes a desperate contract of mutual codependency. We perform for each other, we manage each other's insecurities, we praise each other's masks, all while a deep and unspoken loneliness festers between us. Our connections become fragile, transactional, and brittle, because a connection between two false selves is not a connection at all. It is a shared hallucination. On a mass scale, this individual hollowing out creates the very fabric of our social pathologies. A society of internally empty people is a society ripe for tribalism and ideological possession. We flock to rigid prepackaged belief systems, political, social, or spiritual, because they offer us a ready-made identity, a sense of belonging, and most importantly, an enemy to define ourselves against. The crowd Kierkegaard warned of is now a digital mob, and its siren song of righteous certainty is an irresistible balm for the anxious, uncertain self. We surrender the difficult work of individual thought for the narcotic comfort of the herd. This is the unseen trap. The more you flee your own solitude, the more you become a mere cell in a larger organism, your individuality dissolved in the collective, a ghost in the machine of the crowd. The life you are living is not your own. It is a script, written by the expectations of others and performed out of a deep, conditioned fear. The urgency then is this: you are running out of time to reclaim the lead role, but to do so requires a terrifying, revolutionary act, the act of turning around and walking willingly into the very emptiness you have spent your entire life trying to escape.
The solution, then, is not to find a better crowd. It is not to perfect the mask or to find a more comfortable performance. The solution is an act of profound and terrifying rebellion. It is the decision to stop running, to turn 180 degrees and walk deliberately into the heart of the silence you have been taught to fear. This is not a passive retreat. It is an active reclamation. It is the declaration that you will no longer be a refugee from your own inner world. You are going to go home. This means you must begin to practice a forgotten art, the art of sacred solitude. This is not the aching, accidental loneliness of an empty apartment on a Saturday night. That is the loneliness of absence. Sacred solitude is the loneliness of presence. It is the intentional carving out of time and space, not to be away from others, but to be with yourself. It is the creation of a sanctuary where the gaze of the world cannot penetrate, where the noise of expectation is muted, and where, for the first time in a long time, you can finally hear yourself think. At first, this silence will be deafening. It will feel like a void, just as you feared. Your mind, addicted to the drug of distraction, will scream for a screen, a voice, a task, anything to fill the space. This is the withdrawal. You must sit through it. You must endure the discomfort. Because on the other side of that frantic initial panic is where the real work begins. In that quiet, you will finally come face to face with the stranger you have been avoiding, your own self. The stranger is not an enemy. It is the exiled, disowned, and fragmented parts of you that the false self was created to conceal. It is your unprocessed grief, your unexpressed anger, your secret longings, your profoundest shames. The psychoanalyst Carl Jung called this the shadow. Your task is not to vanquish this shadow, but to integrate it, to listen to it. This is the counterintuitive breakthrough. You do not heal by getting rid of the bad parts of yourself, but by turning toward them with radical acceptance. You sit in your sacred solitude and you allow these ghosts to emerge from the basement of your psyche. You ask them, what do you want? What do you fear? Where does it hurt? You listen without judgment, with the compassionate curiosity of a true friend. You are in effect reparenting yourself. You are giving your true self the unconditional acceptance it was denied in childhood, the acceptance you have been desperately seeking from the outside world ever since. By doing this, you are not filling the void, you are realizing it was never a void to begin with. It was a crowded room, filled with the parts of yourself waiting to be heard. As you do this work, something miraculous begins to happen. An internal anchor begins to form, a center of gravity. For the first time, you begin to feel a sense of solidity, a feeling of being real and substantial, independent of anyone's opinion of you. The great seekers of history understood this. It is no accident that the mystics of every tradition sought the desert, the cave, or the monastery. It is no coincidence that Nietzsche's Zarathustra had to spend 10 years in the mountains before he had anything of worth to say to mankind. They were not running from the world, they were preparing to meet it. They understood that one cannot bring a gift to the world that one has not first discovered within oneself. They were forging a self in the fires of solitude, a self strong enough to withstand the crushing pressure of the crowd. This is how you reclaim your power. You stop outsourcing your sense of self-worth. You cultivate an inner life so rich, so deep, and so compelling that the validation of others becomes a pleasant but non-essential bonus. From this place of inner wholeness, your relationship to others is utterly transformed. You no longer enter a room as a beggar holding out your bowl for scraps of approval. You enter as a sovereign being. You can now engage in the Rilkean ideal. You can finally love. You can love not out of a desperate need to complete yourself, but out of a generous desire to share your fullness. You can listen to another person without your own agenda of validation getting in the way. You can see them for who they are, not for who you need them to be. You break free not by learning a new social strategy, but by ceasing to have a strategy at all. You simply show up, authentically, vulnerably, and whole. This is the foundation of a life of meaning. But there is one final, deeper realization that awaits you at the center of this newfound solitude. A paradigm shift that will not only change your life, but redefine your entire understanding of reality itself.
You have walked the path of rebellion. You've turned your back on the crowd and dared to enter the silence. You've sat with the ghosts in your own psyche and begun the painstaking work of integrating your shadow, of becoming whole. You feel a new solidity, an inner authority that is not dependent on the world's applause. This is a monumental achievement, the reclamation of a life. But it is not the end of the path, it is the doorway. For the final, most powerful realization that awaits you in the depths of your sacred solitude is this. The unique, sovereign self that you have worked so hard to uncover is not, in the end, yours alone. This is the ultimate paradox. The entire journey into the heart of your individual loneliness
The radical act of separating yourself from the demands and definitions of the collective is the prerequisite for discovering the most profound connection imaginable. You had to become a true individual to realize that you are, and have always been, a part of a much larger whole. The consciousness that awakens within you, the I that you have finally met in the quiet, is a localized expression of a universal consciousness. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. The thinkers and mystics of history have tried to name this: Emerson's Oversoul, the Hindu concept of Atman being one with Brahman, the collective unconscious of Jung. But the name does not matter. The experience is what changes everything. In the deepest stillness, a new perspective dawns. You begin to see that your personal story is a single, unique thread in an infinite tapestry. Your personal pain, your anxieties, your longing for connection, they were never just yours. They are the friction of the universe itself, experiencing its own fragmentation and yearning for wholeness through the vessel of your life. That ache you felt in the crowded room was not just your private sorrow, it was the sorrow of a cosmos that is fractured into a billion lonely stars, each one forgetting it is made of the same primordial fire. Your search for love was not just a quest for a partner, it was the universe's own desire to see itself, to know itself, to love itself through the eyes of another. All your past struggles are suddenly recontextualized. They are no longer evidence of your personal brokenness, but the necessary pressures that were hollowing you out, making space for this larger reality to be born within you. The emptiness you so feared was in fact your own infinity, waiting for you to stop trying to fill it with trivial things. This is the ultimate paradigm shift. Your life is not something that is happening to you, it is something that is happening through you. You are a sensory organ of the world, a point of view through which the cosmos becomes aware of its own beauty, its own tragedy, its own mystery. This transforms the nature of your loneliness forever. It is no longer the painful ache of isolation, it becomes a dignified, luminous solitude. It is the solitude of a mountain, which is lonely, yes, but is also profoundly connected to the entire earth. It is the solitude of a star, singular and self-burning, yet an integral part of a vast, interconnected galaxy. You no longer need to run from it because you understand what it is. This sacred space, or the personal, meets the universal. This journey of turning inward is the great, quiet revolution of our time. It is the work that can heal not only our own lives, but the fractured world we see around us. For a world of whole individuals is incapable of the hatred and division that plagues a world of empty crowds. This exploration is the very purpose of our work here together. If you are committed to this path, to the radical act of self-discovery and the profound responsibility that comes with it, then continue this journey with us. Let us ask these questions together and walk this path of becoming whole. And in the end, as you stand firmly in your own being, you will look back on your long flight from yourself with a sense of profound compassion, and you will finally understand that you were never looking for a way to escape your loneliness. You were looking for a way to be worthy of it.